Hello, welcome to the 8th part of our tutorial series about the Python basics. Now heading to our next topic, the loops. So I may be asking, what are loops? In our last chapter, not our last chapter, our chapter before our last chapter, we discussed if conditions. So if conditions, they had the characteristic that you first have the keyword, which is if or else, then you have a colon, and after the colon you have a new line, and then add a level of indentation, and in that level of indentation you write lines of code, and these lines of code are only executed if the if condition is true. Now we don't have an if condition, but we also have a keyword, a colon, and in the next we have lines which have a level of indentation, but loops mean repeat something. So the code which is written in the indentations, or which have the level of indentations, will repeat it, and they will repeat it as often as you define in the loop. So we should start with a loop. The first loop I want to show is the while loop. So we type in the keyword, which is while. Now we type a condition, a variable. We can type true, then we can, which is a condition, and then the colon, then our next line with a level of indentation, and then we can write print 1, 2, 3. So before you skip this video, I'm asking you before executing the code, what do you think, how often will this line be executed? We can press play and see it will be executed endlessly. So I'm shutting down the program, and yeah, it's because while this condition is true, this code will be executed. If we also have another line which is in the same level of indentation, it will also be executed. So what we are gonna do, we first have to declare a variable, for example a. And now the simple way of writing it is while a is greater or equal than 0. And now in the level of indentation, because this code will also repeat itself endlessly, so we also have to decrease our a by 1. And now you see the loop will execute the lines 3 times, I guess. No, I'm stupid. Of course it is 4 times, because when a is 0, it will also be executed. So it are 4 times when a is 0, 1, 2, and 3. So we can also print a. And now we see when a is 3, when a is 2, when a is 1, and when a is 0. So we can make it even simpler, because when we were discussing if conditions, I told you integer is always interpreted as true except it is 0, then it is interpreted as false. So the code also works if we just type in the variable, which in that case is a. Everything works fine as it should. So this is everything about the while loop. The next loop I want to discuss is the for loop. Yeah, I hit the wrong button on my keyboard. So the for loop is something like for I in range 3. So what happens now is pretty simple. We already defined a variable which is I, and if we now press print I, it will give us a 0, a 1, and a 2, because in range 3 means starting from 0, ending with 3, so it means I has always to be less than 3. And yeah, so I starts with 0, then 1, then 2. So if we can say it even more simple, we can just say if we want a loop which does its thing 3 times, we just type in for I in range 3 and it will be executed 3 times. We can also type in 1 and type in 4. Now the loop will start at 1 and end at 3 because less than 4. And we can even add one more integer, which is 2. So now it will only print a 1 and a 3 because the last integer defines the amount which is added to the 1 for each loop. Yeah, for each time the code is executed. Okay, next one is also a for loop, but now we want to define a string first. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, W. Yeah. Now we have the alphabet, and what we are gonna do is we want to loop through this alphabet. So the for loop for this is even simpler. For C, in A, colon, print, that was my mobile device, print C. Now if we execute this code, we see every letter which is printed. Every letter of the string will be printed. Why the letter is printed we will discuss in, the next video. Yeah, in the next one, we are doing lists, or in the video after. But yeah, for the loops, this is everything you should know. So of course you can have a while loop. In the while loop we print A. Now we can also do the keyword in the while loop, which is a for loop. For AA in range 1, 5, we print AA, and we can even have another loop in the loop which is in the loop, so loop in a loop in a loop. And this is for C in, now we can even type a string, and now we can print C. So you can guess that letters are printed really often when we execute this code. Yeah, because I forgot that I have to decrease the A. It will be looped endlessly. But now we see we have a lot of letters. That's why he firstly does this loop, then he goes into this loop, and then he goes into this loop, which has many instances because there are many letters in that string. And yeah, if he iterated through this loop once, he will go back. AA is then increased from 1 to 2 until this loop is done, and every instance he loops through this loop, he will also execute this loop. And yeah, when this loop is finished, it will start again because we also have this loop. So as you can see, as more loops you have, the longer the program needs to do its thing. Yeah, for this part it is everything I wanted to tell you about loops. But yeah, one thing I forgot. In loops you can also do an else keyword, or you can add an else keyword, and by that the else will be executed simply after you finished the loop. So for example, in our for loop, after we type the keyword else, you can now print something, for example something, and now the last thing which is printed is of course something, because yeah, when everything is done, the last loop is a loop through the string, and yeah, when it is finished, it prints something. Of course, it prints something at every end of the loop, and the loop is executed much and many times. Okay, but now we are finished. I hope you could understand what I was telling, or what I was trying to tell. See you in the next video, and yeah, I hope you have fun at coding. Bye bye, see you.